Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Brandon, and welcome back to Marotta Media. First off, I want to apologize if my voice sounds a little strange. My throat has been bugging me for the past few days. But anyway, in today's review, I will be going over my thoughts on the film adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's play, In the Heights. As I mentioned, this is a film adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's play of the same name, which won the Tony Award for Best Musical in 2008. And this was the first play that he wrote, his second being Hamilton. And if you saw my Best Movies of 2020 list, you will know that I'm kind of a big fan of Hamilton. So I knew what In the Heights was, but I didn't know a whole lot about it going into it. But since this was another movie that was delayed by the pandemic, I found a lot more about it before I had actually watched it. And the more I found out about it, the more I got excited about this movie, because I have mentioned on this channel quite a few times that I'm a very big fan of musicals. Like I mentioned, I love Hamilton, and if you've seen my Blu-ray videos, you'll know that I have a lot of musical or music-based movies on my collection. And the basic story of this movie is a multitude of characters living in the titular neighborhood of Washington Heights in New York, and we follow each of them on their journey as each of them have their own fantasies about a better life. And yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I'm not really sure how else to put the plot of this movie into words, but I think that summed it up pretty well. Now, as I mentioned, In the Heights is a musical, and I think that the most important element of any musical is just having good songs. And let me tell you, when I say In the Heights absolutely delivers on that. This movie really has so many songs that I have listened to over and over again since I watched it. They have not left my head, and a lot of them have already shown up on my Spotify on repeat playlist. But I think the thing that I found most interesting about the music is that there were a lot of songs that had pretty substantial tempo changes and changes in style. Specifically a song at the climax of the movie called 96,000, which I might add is my personal favorite song of the entire film. Yes, I haven't stopped singing that song for about a week now. 96,000. 96,000. 96,000. Sorry, I was getting carried away. It's a catchy tune. But that song has so many different styles of music in it. When it first starts off, it's kind of jazzy and upbeat, and then it becomes more hip-hop-ish, and then it becomes slower, and then it slowly starts to evolve into a Latin-based song. Like, if you just showed someone who wasn't familiar with this song 4 different sections of it, then I guarantee you they would have thought it was a completely different song. And I also love the choreography of this scene. I mean, not just specifically this scene, just the choreography as a whole. The opening number had an awesome dance sequence where they're all dancing in the street together. And the song I just mentioned, 96,000, takes place at a community pool. And I love that it had really interesting set pieces like that. Like, you could tell they really thought outside the box with this one. And the music sequences as a whole were just edited so beautifully. I mean, this entire movie was edited well, but especially during the songs. Like, the characters' actions will match up with the beat of the music. It really reminded me of Baby Driver, because that movie also had a similar style of editing. And it's just such a satisfying method of editing, and as a person who was a percussionist for a few years, it's especially satisfying to me. But the musical numbers are especially elevated by really interesting characters and just superb acting by all of the actors who portrayed them. I thought that there was such a perfect mix and balance of each of the characters, and when the movie chose to follow them and their story. And there's basically 4 main characters. There's Usnavi, Benny, Nina, and Vanessa. And there's other characters too, like Usnavi's cousin Sunny, Abuela Claudia, who I mentioned earlier, and the salon ladies. All of them, they don't get as much time in the spotlight, but every time the movie decided to focus on them, even for just a few minutes, it was just so enjoyable to watch. And the way these performances were captured, you really got the sense that Washington Heights is a very tight-knit community. And I'm sure it's like that in reality, but I really felt it while watching this movie. And I don't mean just the fictional characters themselves, I mean I got a real sense of community just from the actors. Just by watching them when they're singing and dancing, you can really tell that they're just having a great time making this film, and it really shines through. And another thing about the neighborhood of Washington Heights, I know it's not the same neighborhood, but a lot of the scenes that were shot in this area really reminded me of Do the Right Thing. Even though the neighborhood in that movie, I believe, was called Bed-Stuy, and that's in Brooklyn, and I believe Washington Heights is in Manhattan, so those are two completely different boroughs, but I just got the same feel from it. But what I said about the actors having an amazing time making this movie is just absolutely apparent, and I think that's just an overall testament to an amazing job directing by John M. Chu. You could tell that this man was very faithful to the source material, even though they did change a few things, but I'll get to that later. Now, I have not seen the In the Heights musical, so I'm only speaking on what I've seen in the movie. I did read a little bit about the stage play after I watched the movie, and there were some changes made, so I can't speak on everything, but a choice they made that I really love is that this movie isn't really grounded in reality. And what I mean by that is that this movie has a lot of fantasy elements to it. I mean, for God's sake, there's a scene where two characters dance on the side of a building, which to me was very reminiscent of La La Land. So In the Heights really reminded me of a lot of different movies, but the movies that it reminded me of are all fantastic films, and I think that's high praise when I compare it to them. I also found myself laughing quite a bit. Just the banter between characters I found to be so natural and just very funny. But that being said, there have not been many movies in my life that I've seen where I have legit cried actual tears, and In the Heights was not one of them, but believe me when I tell you, I choked up quite a few times and I was fighting back actual tears. But to me, the overall appeal of In the Heights was the fact that I was able to perfectly picture all of these events playing out on stage. The set pieces may be different, they may have changed a few things, but I was able to picture how they would do these things in a live stage performance, whether it be at the locations they actually did it or if it was something entirely different. And that is the beauty of a good stage play, because it leaves everything up for interpretation. Usually the events playing out on stage are not how they're supposed to actually look. It leaves it up to your mind. And that was one of my main criticisms with Cats. That movie really didn't leave anything up for interpretation. It just had literally everything playing out how it looked. And that's why I think that movie worked a lot better as a stage play and shouldn't have even been made into a movie, even though I did not dislike that movie as much as other people did. But within the Heights, I did not get that feeling at all. I was able to imagine everything playing out on the stage, and I just loved that feeling. Now, like I said, I'm not familiar with the play as much as I would like to be, but I felt like I didn't really have to be, because the movie just made everything so accessible. But it isn't perfect, and there were a few things that I did not quite like about In the Heights. There were a few plot points in the story that are brought up, but they're never really fully expanded upon. One of the things that they mention a few times just in conversation and in a few of the songs is how they're losing their neighborhood of Washington Heights to gentrification. It never really goes much deeper into the impact this is having on the neighborhood. I mean, there is a character who owns a cab business, and he mentions that he sold half of it to a laundromat or a dry cleaner. I think it was a dry cleaner. But I would have liked if they went a little deeper into that. And I won't get into spoilers, but there is another character who we find out something about this character that's a pretty big deal. It's only mentioned once, and then it isn't really brought back up again until the end. If you've seen the movie, then you absolutely know what I'm talking about, but I felt like this should have played a much bigger role in the overall story. And there were also some story beats that kind of just came out of nowhere that I felt were very random, specifically something involving a blackout. But I mean, I guess that makes sense because blackouts are random and you don't expect them, you don't know when they're gonna hit, so I guess in a way that makes sense, but I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. And even though I'm not as familiar with the play, I did do some reading on the play after I watched the movie, and there were a few story elements that were missing from the movie that were in the play. And I think these story elements that they took out would have made for some really interesting conflicts. But despite all of that, I absolutely loved this movie. But In the Heights, it's just a beautiful film about dreams, sacrifice, and what it truly means to belong. And it honestly has not left my head since, and I truly cannot wait to watch this movie again, because let me tell you, I will absolutely be watching it multiple times. And overall, I would give In the Heights a 9 out of 10. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of In the Heights. If you guys saw this movie, then let me know what you thought about it. Did you love it, or did you hate it? If you did, what the hell is wrong with you? If you guys like this review, then be sure to hit that thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe. If you guys want to see my past reviews, I will link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.